Design System London number 7. Let's see here. So who am I? So my name is Louise. I'm head of product design at YLD, who is one of the sponsors for this event or for this community. Design System London, we are trying to gather people to talk about all things design system. One of the things that I keep on saying every time is that we are very proud that we have a very kind of from speaker perspective, some people who are very seasoned speakers, and we also have absolutely new speakers who haven't never been on a stage before, and we try to give them that platform. Today's agenda for today, doors open. We all done that. So we're going to hear some intros soon. We're going to kick off the first talk a little bit late, but the big difference from today from previous is that we don't have a live stream. So this is just recorded and the video will be available on our YouTube channel, but that means that we are not as strict with timings. So we're feeling a bit more relaxed today. We got Maryia and Rachel from Just Eat Takeaway, who's going to kick us off on the first talk. Then we got Débora and Jeremy from the Lego group, who's going to be talking to us. And we're going to take a quick break, and after that, we're going to come back with Henry, and then we're going to wrap up with a Q&A as we normally do, and you get a chance to ask all the speakers on all the topics that you heard. And then we do a little wrap up and maybe a little surprise, and then we go to the pub. And I believe that the pub this time is literally downstairs. You get out of the door and then there is the pub. So that is the closest that we've ever been. So this time there are no excuses of getting lost on the way. So the topics, one business, multiple systems, how to succeed. That's going to be an interesting one. And I know that some people in this room are actually very much working on that right now. So there's a lot of learnings to be had. Design tokens, building blocks for designer. I just love that the Lego group went for building blocks for designers. It's such a fitting topic for them. So I love that. Thank you for that. And also how to survive design systems. Yes, I think that's something that we can all kind of take on board on how to do that. So, as always, super exciting stuff. Moving on to the next one. As always, some logistics before we start. So, code of conduct. Keep your language clean and be nice to each other. We do have a Slido deck for a Slido link for your questions to the speakers. So make sure that if you ask questions, first of all, make clear who it is for, but keep your language clean as part of the code of conduct. It says here for the live stream, we don't have a live stream this time, so there's no chat to join, I'm afraid. But we are, of course, on social media. That happens always, at DSLConf or at YLD. IO. The hashtags, keep on saying this, Design System London, the longest hashtag in the world, and then there are no characters left, but you know what? You can use DSL or just Design Systems. But if you are taking photos and sharing, which you should be, of course, please use them so you can see what everyone else is doing. LinkedIn, YouTube, Meetup. So you kind of thinking to yourself, how do I get on all this? It's quite simple, actually. You got a fantastic QR code up there. Yeah, you love that, don't you? Yeah, it's very good. I'm very proud of that. Which QR code? You mean this one to rule them all? Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. Ask questions, follow us, join us, see all the recordings of the previous talks, because you're gonna, if you're a first time, you're gonna think like, wow, I wish I could have been to more of those. Well, you can kind of on YouTube, so they're all there. Find out more about YLD and what we do, and check out if we can actually do code and stuff that we claim that we can, which I'm telling you, we can, but it's there. And you can also see any openings that we have. So, before we get started, I'm just going to have a quick few words from our fantastic sponsors. So I mentioned YLD a couple of times, and obviously we're in this fantastic venue here with justeattakeaway.com. Some of you might know them from before. I certainly do. There's been a couple of evenings that I've kind of gone like, can I be bothered? No, I can't, but I tell you who can. Oh, yes. So I'm very excited to be here. Also, I was going to say this is another venue with a fantastic view, but now when I'm looking outside and it's completely dark and you can't really see it. But it is, we are quite high up and it is quite pretty. So we are going to start by getting a couple of quick words from YLD. So I would like to welcome Christine. She's just going to give us a quick intro. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Hello, everybody. So good evening. Thank you for joining Design Systems London number 7. Many more to come, obviously. So my name is Christine, and I'm the community and content lead at YLD. So before we get to the talks, I'm here to share briefly about who we are and what we do as a company. So we are a software engineering and product design consultancy that has been growing rapidly as we continue to work with a diverse range of companies globally across various industries. So we've worked with clients from publishing, healthcare, fintech, renewable energy, and the list keeps growing as we're only expanding further. So our main goal is to help clients by leaving them in a much better place than how we found them by sharing our expert knowledge and equipping them with the future-proof skills and capabilities. On that note, we're always looking for talented people to join our team for both permanent and contract positions. So be sure to check out our job openings on the Wildy site. You have the QR code that will be flashing up again. And feel free to approach anyone with a Wildy shirt, as there are quite a few of us here. We can definitely chat with you about the projects we've done, any potential openings, the openings that are already here, or the prospect of starting a project with us. Why not, right? So lastly, more about the community events. If there's any other future event you'd like to collaborate with us, then please just approach us for that as well. So without further ado, thank you all for your time and have a lovely rest of your evening. Enjoy the talk.
Thank you very much, Christine and Wildy. And also, before we get going, I want to have a quick word from justeattakeaway.com. Got Ellis here. Come on, Ellis.
Cheers, Lewis. Hello, everyone. Nice, busy room. We are justeattakeaway.com. I am Ellis Capon. So just for those of you that don't know who we are, there's a brief couple of slides here. So we are a leading global online food delivery marketplace. We have 20 different markets, which actually surprised me before I joined the company. I had no idea that we were that big, so it's quite nice. We have over 90 million active customers, which again surprised me. And we have a fantastic team, which did not surprise me. So we actually have over 15,000 employees across the whole globe, and within product and tech and design, we actually work with a lot of them through Canada and the rest of Europe as well. So it's actually a really great opportunity to work with lots of diverse people. And here's a globe. And here's a bit of a backstory that might help with our talk later on. That kind of gives a bit of an overview of what happened and why Just Eat is so big now. So Telesbezorg is, if everyone wants to have a go at saying that they can, is a Dutch, or was a Dutch food company. It still goes by that name in the Netherlands. And Just Eat was a Danish food delivery company made in 2001. So they started around the same time. We'll miss out this bit, they grew. And then in 2020, they merged. And today we are justeattakeaway.com. So we have a vision, strategy, and value, as most companies do. So our vision is to empower your every food moment. We have a world-class food ordering and payment solution. We have the best product, restaurant, and choice and customer care. And we have, I think, a pretty fun, loving brand that everyone loves. And our values are lead, deliver, and care. So working at Just Eat, I've been here for about 7 months now. So, one of the benefits is that you do have a global impact. You work with people all across the globe. As a lot of large companies, but especially in Just Eat Takeaway, we have amazing learning and development opportunities where you can develop your career. We have flexible working, obviously, and we have loads of corporate benefits, not least free food and gym memberships. Inclusion, diversity, and belonging is a massive part of our business. Some of you have already spoken to me tonight about the ProductCon talk, where our Chief Product Officer, Jess Hall, spoke around product inclusion and what that means to her personally. But now, as the Chief Product Officer for Jet, she really kind of champions that, and she's pretty amazing. And we also have a new role open in my team for product inclusivity product manager, which just kind of shows the intent of the company, I think. So this person will be responsible for accessibility and inclusivity across our whole product range. And to build on that, we have many communities throughout Jet. We have the women in tech community, the LGBTQ plus community, parents and carers, etc., neurodiversity, as well. So no matter who you are, there's a place for you at Jet, and it's such a warm and welcoming place to work. We are also responsible, so we try and look after our planet as best we can. You would have all seen our electric bikes on the roads, no doubt, and we try and cut down on our food and waste, our food packaging and our waste quite a lot as well. And we also try and employ, really good working conditions for our staff. Inclusion is obviously one of them, but also engagement and wellness. We do work hard, but we don't just work hard. We also party hard too. I'm not going to play the video, but every year there's a summer party. And last year, infamously, there was a ski fest as well, whereby they took the whole business to Switzerland. I wasn't there, so I'm pretty salty about it. That's probably not going to happen again, but we do fun stuff. Please do check out our roles at Jet. Go to careers.justeattakeaway.com. We've got a lovely recruiter, Vicky, here somewhere as well in the crowd. And at the back, talk to Vicky if you want to find out about open roles. But that should be it. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. So, just a quick reminder, one business, multiple systems, how to succeed. Maryia and Rachel from justeattakeaway.com. Design tokens, building blocks for designers from Débora and Jeremy at the Lego Group. And how to survive design system with Henry from Societe Generale. Pardon my French. Again, I got a giggle on that. Rude. Thank you. It was admirable. Okay, fine, I'll take that. Again, this fantastic QR code for all your questions. And that's it. I have nothing else to say. It's about to kick off, really. I would like to welcome Maryia and Rachel onto the stage. It's all yours. Don't be shy.
Okay, amazing. So we're going to get started. So hey, I'm Rachel, Senior UI Designer here at Just Eat Takeaway.
And I'm Maryia, and I'm Frontend Engineer, and we both work in Design System team. So you already know what we do, thanks to Alice's nice intro, so let's dive straight in. First of all, throughout the talk, we will be referencing to justeattakeaway.com as Jet for short, just to save some time, don't be surprised. So Jet is a big company, as you already know, and we grew to this size through a number of business acquisitions.
And then last year, as a company, it was decided that we need to start unifying our customer-facing apps. So kind of create a consistent user experience, and kind of this is where design systems really came into play. So design systems weren't an unknown concept at Jet. Because of obviously all the legacy business acquisitions that had happened along the way, it left two main design systems, but with very different histories, structures, and usage. Noting we do have more design systems here at Jet, supporting other businesses as well, but both Pi and Snacks support our two primary customer-facing platforms, so we started here.
So on one hand, we have a design system called Pi, which stands for Principles of Interfaces and Experiences. And it originated from a team of developers from Just Eat side and started as a UI components library to reduce code duplication and to promote consistency across different code bases. And it's written in Vue.js framework.
Designers got involved much later in the process of Pi, only really when they started to create a visual design language. This was then adopted by the text library.
It consists of 30 atom, molecule, and more complex organism components, and it also has pages and templates as part of the library. And it supports 25 different teams across different platforms, including iOS and Android mobile applications. And on the other hand, we have a system called Snacks, and it stems from a collaborative design developer team on Takeaway side. And it had business investments from the beginning, and it was written using React framework. And it consists of 60 atom and molecule components that are agnostic to business logic. And it's solely focused on supporting one customer-facing product. And one of the main differences of these two design systems is that Snacks is released as one single library package, while Pi releases each component independently.
So this left us with two very different design systems with different UIs, different tech stacks, and two completely separate teams. We couldn't just pick one of the design systems and start forcing everyone to use it because that just wouldn't have gone down very well. So we needed to start exploring how we could bring these two design systems closer together. So we knew we needed to align multiple design systems to create one unified language in order to achieve our business goal of creating a consistent user experience.
So we started thinking about how we can solve this problem, considering time limitation, which we had, continuous feature development by multiple work streams, which we couldn't freeze. Also, we had multiple product requirements we need to take into account, different technical stacks with different foundations, and multiple platforms to support. We knew we had a lot to untangle, so we took it all and narrowed our focus down to three main areas.
But because our main goal was to, of course, have a unified visual language, this is where we started. So previously on the Just Eat side of things, we had a project called Icing happen, which really took steps to create a more modern and bold user interface. So, I mean, that was great for us because it meant that decision had already been made in terms of a new global visual direction. So on the left, we've got the kind of pre-icing version, and on the right, we've got the kind of post-icing version, which really took steps to celebrate our new brand orange, really bring the content into the main focus, and overall just create a new and modern look. Pi's role was really crucial in the development of Icing, as it was the design system that already supported the legacy Just Eat platforms, so it meant that the resulting implementation was fairly seamless because it was already integrated.
So we now needed to ensure that Snacks design system was pulling from the same visual language. And despite the core requirements for both systems different, with Pi having a more comprehensive but generalized approach, while Snacks was more specialized design system supporting only one platform, there was still a significant amount of overlap between them. And looking at the components, we can see that both systems have what you can refer as core components like buttons, modals, tabs, and it was from both design and engineering perspective. And we knew that we couldn't reduce duplication from technical perspective just because we still needed to continue supporting projects that use both Vue and React frameworks.
But we could remove the design duplication and create one design single source of truth. So on the left and right, we've got the exact same components, but we've got two different, very different visual languages, as well as very different naming conventions. We've got toggle versus select, segmented control versus options, but actually these things are really easy to align. But the component consolidation aspect, not so much. Even though we've got the same components in two different design systems, we had different variants, we had different modifiers, behaviors and interactions were different, and also the way the teams used these components differed as well. So what we decided to do was do a gap analysis. So we identified the requirements on both sides and really took these and assessed them, not just to kind of where they were used currently, but their benefit to the business as a whole, which was great. So where this left us was that we actually took the Pi core Figma file and we actually added 7 new components and 22 component consolidations out of the requirements that we had assessed on the Snack side. All this into one main file, all pulling from one token source of truth. But tokens weren't quite as easy on the development side of things.
Yeah, and as Pi tokens were already used by Vue.js platform, by iOS and Android apps, we decided to go forward with the adoption by Snacks as well. And as you can imagine, adoption of new visual language is prone to breaking functionality both visually and functionally, so we decided to split it into stages. And we started with fundamental updates like typography, color, spacing, etc. And we made sure that new tokens were available in the system, but because of the significant difference between Snacks design tokens and Pi design tokens, we allowed duplication at this stage, and we had both sets of tokens available in the system. And then we moved to component updates. So here you see a button component as an example of transition. And on the left-hand side, we have initial tokens used by Snacks system for properties like font size, line height, radius, etc. And on the right-hand side, you can see that we introduced a level of abstraction with component alias CSS variables. They start from button in their name. And first of all, we map them to initial snags tokens, meaning that they will not be visual change for end users. We introduced new CSS variables also to make sure that PI requirements were met. And then when we were happy, we then just swapped all the old snags tokens to new PI tokens, which are on dark background there. And it worth mentioning that the nature of component updates went beyond basic theming. It would be really easy to just swap colors, change some border colors, and this will be it. But we had variants, modifications, different states, and compositional changes. And what's more, for the sake of velocity, the migration introduced a certain amount of technical debt, which we obviously took into account and planned to address after the project was completed.
So not only did we have both design and development duplication, but we had two completely separate teams from two legacy businesses, each with their own ways of working and both very passionate about their design systems. We had notable differences in how the two teams aimed to approach the project, kind of address challenges, as well as like just general communication, so kind of, as you can imagine. So let's talk a little bit about how we address that. So collaboration really was key for us. We put a big effort into making sure that all parties kind of had a say in decision making, but I'd be lying if I said it was easy all the time, because everyone had really strong views about what they saw for the future of design systems. So we remained pragmatic and focused on the most practical and feasible approach forward. And then once we were all on the same page, working towards a common goal, yeah, the collaboration definitely really improved.
Yeah, and we also introduced secondments for team members to share and gain knowledge between two technical teams. And this was the case for me. I used to work with Vue.js framework, and I joined React team to, first of all, share my experience of PI tokens adoption and to obviously learn more about React design system team we had. And for the wider community, we introduced onboarding sessions like getting started with Figma for designers who used to work with different sets of tools before, and onboarding to PI for developers who were consuming our design system.
So after everything we've talked about, let me take you through what we actually managed to achieve. So if we look at the impact that the design system had on the takeaway app, so on the left, we've got the kind of pre-project version, and on the right, we've now got the one that's now fully aligned to the new Jet visual language. It's using a brand new set of tokens. It's got a brand new set of iconography. We've removed the blue and really championing that brand orange, as well as a whole new set of kind of core components that are now kind of the same across our Just Eat platform as well. But we didn't just roll this out on the customer-facing sites, but also other products across the business. So no matter if you're a customer, delivery driver, or a restaurant partner, we're going to provide you the same look and feel and a consistent user experience no matter the product that you're interacting with.
And we were able to achieve this through the new structure of our now global design system. PI evolved into a mature design language by absorbing the best of two previous design systems we had. And we still support different tech frameworks, as you can see, but now they're all powered by one single design source of truth.
So if we look at from the design system team from a year ago to now, firstly, we are one single team all working together, which is absolutely amazing. We've also expanded since then and hired Ellis, which is great. But we're now all on a mission to maintain and evolve our global design system, both for our end users, but also our product-focused teams here at Jet.
And we introduced, for the community, we introduced a standardized support model, reducing the friction for consumers of our system. And we also started to collect regular feedback to make sure that we give our users a voice in the direction of PI.
And another big project they've been working on as well is our new documentation site, which is actually now live at pi.design. So check it out and let us know what you think. But what we've got currently on there is kind of all things PI, as well as kind of getting started with the design system, both for developers and designers. And what we've got coming soon is our new accessibility hub, as well as component documentation and interactive playgrounds. But if you want to know any more about this, we've actually got Geordie and Jamie here tonight, who are the leads on this project. So definitely seek them out after this if you've got any more questions.
And we want to give you a bit of an insight what's next for our design system. We are currently developing a set of framework-agnostic web components, which we hope will be globally used across any Jet product, eliminating the component duplication that we couldn't address earlier. And even though mobile apps already use Pi foundations, we are planning to embed mobile developers into design system team to make sure that apps are fully integrated.
And as we kind of mentioned before, we actually have other design systems here at Jet, and these enhancements are going to bring those teams on board. But we've still got a lot of work ahead of us to bring those teams into the Jet's global visual design system, Pi. But we all hope you've kind of come away a little bit clearer with how to succeed as a business with multiple design systems to contend with.
That's it.
I have to say, I really love that it's called pie and snacks. It makes me peckish. Well, I can only imagine. Thank you so much. We'll see you both back later for the Q&A. If you do have any questions for them, please. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of things at the same time here. There we go. Or there we go. Yes, it's happening. Something is happening. If you do have any questions, please use the Slido, and I'm sure you have. I definitely have some questions there. We are waiting for the next two speakers to get mic'd up, I think. Is there anyone here who haven't been to any of our previous events? We have quite a few new people here. That's quite nice. So then I assume the rest of you are veterans. You've been here many a times. It's a few nods, yes, okay. Anyone here who's ever been to the actual conferences that we used to run back in 2018, 2019? We have conference people as well. Wow, it's a crowd. I told you guys that's why I moved you forward, because you're regulars, yeah? This is what happens. Appreciate the support, obviously. Saved by these two lovely speakers, Débora and Jeremy, please take over. Apparently my QR code is not working. I'm out of here.
So yeah, hello everyone. So there was a very fun typo on how our talk name was presented. So it's actually like design tokens, building blocks for developer collaboration, because it's about collaboration. And I'm Débora. I am an application engineer at the Lego Group. I am here with Jeremy, which I will refer to as Jazz, who is a lead digital product designer, also at the Lego Group. We work on the same team. And yeah, I will start this talk with a story. So it's a story that probably has happened to, with everyone or almost everyone. I believe so. So it starts when a designer comes to a group of developers and say, there's a new style property that's come, let's say a primary button color. And the natural instinct for us developers is to go and say, okay, I'll put it on a global variable and use it around. But also there's a natural instinct for us to hurry up some task and hard code it somewhere. That may happen. So yeah, the problem really starts afterwards. So on the next slide, because the designer comes and says, for any reason, maybe because the branding changed or because of anything else, the color has changed, or let's say the font family has changed, and now it's different. And then we can say, okay, I'll just change the global variable and consider the task done. But the problem is, what about the hard-coded values? What about everything else that's hidden underneath? What if the developer that has done that has changed teams or left the company? So we have our actual problem is that everyone is unhappy because the designer is going to see an inconsistent design. There may be problems with the branding. And also for the developer, they're going to need to manually go and replace everything. And it's a repetitive task and not really engaging. So this is why we're here to talk about the solution that we're trying to bring and apply to the Lego Group and Lego.com nowadays, which is design tokens. And we're going to talk about why is a design system important at the Lego Group, how we have set up our system, and also what are our main challenges and learnings over the last few months, over the last year that we've been implementing this new design. So yeah, just a quick introduction. I'll go first. My name is Débora. I am a full stack engineer, application engineer at the Lego Group. I've been working there for over a year now. And I am Brazilian. I've been living in London for the past 3 years. I have a bit over 3 years experience as a developer. And yeah, that's my username there.
And I'm Jeremy or Jez. So I've been in Lego Group almost 5 years now. I've been in the design industry for about 19 years. And if you're interested in Lego or toy photography, then my Instagram handle is down there. So a little introduction about what Lego Group is. Obviously, everyone knows who Lego are. It's a Danish company founded in 1932, one of the world's leading manufacturers of play materials. In the area that we are in, digital technology, is over 1,000 employees. And we have offices in London, Billund and Copenhagen. And if you are interested, we are hiring for many different positions, so we can point you in the right direction for that.
So if we go back to the problem that the story was talking about, like if we want to state a problem in one sentence would be, how can we improve the design and developer collaboration in teams and reduce the repetitive work while still allowing for frequent design iterations?
So what are our goals and what's our audience type? So our ambition for the system is, for example, if the brands are starting at the bottom here, say the brand want to change their typeface, they want to change the Lego logo from red to pink. The whole point of that is that if we have a powerful design system, those changes can creep into that system and it can then spurt out into different areas. So we have web, native, kiosk experiences, and that then helps all of our different audience types, so consumer, shopper, partner, and colleagues. That's the ambition of what our design system is. So the fundamental layers there, so the red layer there, that's where the brand sits. That comes into our global token layer, which then filters into our core systems, the alias layers, and of course, that's all built off components. So our user group, so Lego, being such a big company, we have 4 different areas that we focus on. We have an education side, we have a consumer, so it's our kids' experiences. The shopper and grown-ups area, that's the area that Deb and I are in. And then partner colleagues, so all our kind of B2B experiences. So we have 4 different user groups, 4 different experiences that the design system tokens have to kind of apply in. So we have this kind of global design systems layer with the supporting CDM. And what are the goals for the design system? Why are we doing this? What's the most important thing here? So we have 6 points that are really important for us. So it's to remove that duplication. We have so many teams doing the same work. We have lots of many little kind of component libraries that sit across the system. So removing that is really important. Making it more efficient, so the speeding up of design and development is really key. Again, accessibility, being able to be consistent and accessible with our kind of performance. Quality assurance, so again, yes, the design system is fantastic, but we need to get it into the audience, into the users. We need to iterate, learn on those changes and bring them back into the system. Of course, cohesiveness is really important, so we have a very large Lego ecosystem, so how do we make sure it's consistent across all the experiences? And to be scalable, so making sure that when we have new designers onboarding or developers onboarding, that they can get into the experience really quickly. And also, if it, like Deb said, if a developer moves from product to product, how do we make sure that they're kind of linked into that?
Oh. So yeah, moving next to how have we set up our system. This would be like a simplified view of how the end-to-end pipeline of a design token would go from the UX tool until the web page. So this would be trying to abstract it away from the specific choices. Of course, I'm using the Figma logo here, but it could be like most of the major UX tools nowadays have some sort of support for design tokens. So it's up for the designers to create, to name and give values to the design tokens that are going to be consumed. And then those can be transformed into JSON objects by this plugin. And then they can be synced into a storage, which in most cases is going to be a code repository, because then the developers need to apply some logic and some extra transformations on it. So I gave some examples as like CSS or JavaScript or TypeScript variables, but it could be anything that can be then further consumed and rendered into a web page. And if we go to the next slide, this is just like I use the logos as a way to just go a bit more into details on what are our particular choices for Lego.com at the moment. We are using Figma as the UX tool of choice. And then the most mature plugin at the moment would be Token Studio. For Figma, they have of course, a free version if you want to just play around, but the pro version is quite complete and has many useful features. So the designers have been using this pro version. Then we have a library called Design Systems for our tokens. We use this open source tool here by Amazon called Style Dictionary, which transforms like the JSON files into anything that we want. They have like a wide range of like possible outputs. We use it to transform our tokens mostly into CSS variables and TypeScript types. Then we reconsume those tokens into our component library, which we call scroll. Just gonna show a bit more about like how scroll looks like, but it's our component library, which is built out of TypeScript, React, and CSS modules. Then that component library is exported as a version library, and we consume it in our Frontend monorepo. It's a Next.js app, and finally that's rendered as lego.com that you can visit nowadays. Yeah, and then over to Jazz for...
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about a kind of design system structure. So I mentioned about the 4 user groups. We have 4 kind of lead designers that sit across this. And this is kind of how our structure is set up. So we have, again, from the Figma side, we're obviously communicating through to GitHub wherever we can. So the core area, that's where our kind of core global tokens live. And that also includes our kind of color library and our typography kind of, we have a flexible max and min typography scale that sits in the core layer. Then we have our CDN, so it's our supporting icon, logo, and brick library. And then I mentioned here before about this is where scroll is. So these are our user groups. So as a kind of design guild, we look at the components. So you might have a button, you might have a text input. We look at all the fundamental requirements that all the different user groups need. We work together on that, and then once we're happy with it, that then goes into the different styles and components area, depending on which user group they're in. And of course, the styles and components also have patterns, which is obviously pre-composited components. And eventually that then goes into modules, which is kind of content experiences that we have on the site. But each of those sections kind of a read and write kind of level with GitHub. So again, I mentioned global tokens. So we have quite a lot of different areas. We mentioned about the font scale. So we have a kind of max and min font scale. So as the browser kind of scales down, the font kind of comes with it. We have global sizes, global spacing. And then I mentioned a bit before, we have a kind of global color palette where today, kind of producers can put any kind of hex value into the system, where we're trying to lock that down now to make sure we have one source of truth around our global color palette. Then when it comes out of the global layer, this is something actually kind of been work in progress on the right-hand side. We're trying to figure out kind of tokens markup, the best way to kind of keep consistency across how we go here. So the first bit you're seeing there is the alias layer. So we have like a base and a modifier. So an example of this could be like a sizing, like a size min. Excel is an example of that. So you're kind of taking a category, a property, and a scale. Another example there could be then for the text header. So it's a concept, a property, and then the scale is bold. So we have all these different alias values for all the different properties that we have. And then, of course, this is something completely brand new that we're just kind of coming into now, is then how does that turn into the components layer? So the big bit that comes in there is what is the object? So for example, an example of that could be an input, a checkbox input, which has a background, the input container. What size is that? It's large. And then another one here, the action, kind of the button component has a primary state, a variant of emphasis, it has a label, it has a color, and it has a hover state. And for example, something like a checkbox, it could have 40 different component tokens. So it's really quite detailed and really quite heavy. But the reason why we're doing this is that, yes, the alias token is very important. You can get all the core colors in here, so the core colors that we're using here. But if any reason Lego want to change our kind of emphasis, our CTA, to pink, then we can automatically do that. But if it's a certain part of the component we don't want to do that, then we can tackle that with the component layer. So it does look a bit crazy, a bit mad, but it does have some logic behind it. And then just in case anyone doesn't know the difference between the 3 areas, we have obviously the global layer, the alias layer, and the component layer. So for us, and one thing we try and make sure that anyone who consumes is do not consume the global tokens. Don't use that directly. That's the kind of the big box of Lego bricks. That's everything that we have to offer. Examples of that are kind of the core blue 1300 or the core orange 700. We have like kind of color scales that we brought in. What we do want people to use is the alias layer. This is the layer where we kind of start to put kind of statements on this. So action primary pressed, action emphasis default. This is the cushion layer. This is very important for teams to use. And eventually, once we start getting component tokens in, because that is our next thing we're looking to do, then you have really kind of decisive areas where you've got checkbooks, input color selected. So you can see that's the background blue. And then the button emphasis color enabled is the background of the button. So, and again, our eventual goal is to move the cushion layer down one. So then only the component token layer should be utilized in that space. And then we mentioned about scroll. So this is something that we're trying to, again, from documentation points of view. So a designer, there's a lot of different states to a button. So we have a variant, we have a scale, we have a size. states and usages. So we're trying to make it quite simple for documentation purposes, so the designer can understand the ins and outs of a component. When it comes to sending it over to developers, we have the component annotation tool. So again, that's coming from the Figma plugin. And then of course, the bottom down there, it's the API state. So what as we go and build through every component to make sure we're keeping the same kind of rules that we're putting in. So what's the variant naming? What's the scale, size, usage, all that kind of stuff, because you can easily build a component and not have consistency as you go across the board. One more slide. And I mentioned about scroll. So scroll is the kind of the naming convention we have for the shopper side. So again, we have a clear destination for design, so the Figma side, and then we have a clear destination in Storybook. So anything that's being worked on, we have the one sort of truth coming across these two different bases.
Nice. So we wanted to show how we've been applying this system at Lego.com. This is one example that I really like to show because it's the first module, front-end module that we managed to put in production soon, like 3 months after we started building this new component library and this new design system, which is this banner, Advanced Product Hero banner. It has like this big name, but what is really cool about it, you can see in the boxes what types of properties we had through tokens, but like there's no hard-coded values. There's no like old way of consuming style properties in this one. It's all coming from CSS variables. There are design tokens, so all coming through Figma. And the buttons, they are scroll buttons, which they are buttons that were also built from design tokens. So it's all in there. And if we go next, this is the project redesign. It's not fully implemented in production yet, but it's the project that we have for the redesign of the product listing page. And this is our goal for this year, like stabilizing the design and bringing this brand consistency to all of the pages at Lego.com. So we've been doing this slightly. The buttons are already implemented, and we're going to add more and more components to scroll and use them. But yeah, we can see like, again, the boxes are similar because we're just applying those basic styles like over and over through design tokens.
So challenges and learnings, what have we learned? And again, it's a very short space of time that we've done this, and there's a lot still to do. So the first one, naming is hard. Like, it's very easy to make a breaking change, and the amount of times Deb and other developers have had a go at me about it. So for example, a breaking change for us is at the top there, I'd have blue 900. If I decide to call that bright blue 900, don't do that. It's a breaking change. But the value can change. So you might have blue 900, which is a hex file that you see there. That's fine. You can change the value underneath it, but as long as the naming convention stays the same, it's important. So keep token names coherent throughout the time. It really helps when it comes to scaling the system, because if you are going to break it, it's going to be very, very challenging. So what the learnings from this, I mentioned before about aliasing. Aliasing is really important at this stage. Eventually it will be the component layer. And avoid consuming global tokens in the code. Like, if you have a very small system, fine, that works. But we have got quite a large system, and it's going to get bigger and bigger. Consider scalability from the start. So if you are going to make breaking changes, do it earlier on. Don't do it later down the line, because you have a lot of rework to do, and a lot of developers will hate you. So, up to you. Yeah.
The second one is more about the code side of it. It's like choosing how to consume and version the design system from the start. And this can be a bit tricky because at the same time, we want to ensure consistency throughout like different teams and different squads. And how can we make sure that everyone is using the same value for a given token? At the same time, how can we kind of create this alias of abstraction between the rest of the front-end development and the design system? In our case, we decided to go with a version package. So Scroll, our component library, is a separate package from our monorepo. However, at the same time, we need to ensure that everyone's consuming the same package. So we don't give our squads the freedom to go and use the minor version that they want. Everyone needs to be on the same page. This causes a bit of like back and forth. We need to take accountability for some breaking changes, major versions, which is not the way we ideally want to do, but it's so it works for us at the moment, controlling the version for everyone, and then following the semantic versioning and being very strict about what is a minor version, what is a major, what is a patch. Like, it can be painful. For us, it was like a learning experience, how to do it internally, and then still be accountable for it, but it's worth it so far. The third one is like about communication. So it's both on the like developer design and like collaboration. It's really important to keep talking and collaborating and don't work in silos. It's very easy, even with this new approach of having a pipeline that goes from designer to development quite automatically. It's easy to slip into misalignment. So for the designers to go ahead in Figma, or for the developers to just rush with new implementations. But it's very important to be aligned and don't let one go too far ahead from the other. And also the second part is collaborating with, communicating with users and just explaining then why we're going for this different approach, why are things changing, and just leaving some open communication channels for them to come back to us and ask questions. So yeah, for major learnings, just like pairing sessions. So yeah, me and Jazz, we have spent like hours pairing together, and this has helped like both sides. I think we now have a very good understanding of how his approach to design tokens work, and he understands how I have to handle the changes. And this is something that actually helps a lot in the process.
Cool. And then scaling and consumption. So development teams require components. So for example, as we scale this out, people will need components. Doesn't exist yet. How do we get that in there? So that's very important challenge. And then obviously the system only works if the squads are going to adopt it. We have an existing component library which people will just keep jumping to. How do we get them off that and move to the new one? That's quite an important one. So for us, it's bringing user requirements in at the component layer. So at the component stage. So I will go and link up to all the different designers, find out all the requirements that they have, and then obviously bring those into the build. And then obviously unlocking the squad's ability to build components following a contribution guide. So it's something that we've built out now. So we're not literally just holding to one squad that works on this. Other squads can contribute and they can build. And then the most important thing I think, which we're still to do, is to bring the user feedback. So once the component is out there and the users are actually kind of interacting with that, have we made an improvement? Have we made some things better for the user? So getting that feedback is really important to make sure the components are better. So for me, it's improving the feedback loop is really, really important. So user testing that, iterating it, learning, bring it back into the system. And again, that design pairing, we mentioned obviously design and development pairing is important, but also design pairing across the squads is also a valuable thing. So recap and conclusion. So just a quick few points here. So obviously design tokens, key value pairs of design properties. Obviously we're currently using Figma as a UX tool. And obviously we sync that into the code repository. And the aim of this is to ensure consistency and save time for both designers and developers when updating a design system.
Yeah, something that you, like both designers and developers, gain from using this new approach is everyone is really clear on what are the roles and responsibilities, and they have more clarity around like what they should do, like what is their place. At the same time, like it still allows for a lot of collaboration. And the main challenges, as we show, were around communication, naming, versioning, scaling, and feedback. The main tip around this, other than the things that we shared, is just to try to agree and acknowledge those challenges as early as possible before the system scales too much. And this is a QR code with a couple of resources, especially around like some of the libraries we've been using, style dictionary, some articles and videos, and yeah, also the link to Lego careers if you are interested. Yeah.
I won't go into the next page because I think people are taking pictures.
Five.
The next page is thank you. So.
Yeah, and it's thank you. Thank you a lot for listening. Yeah.
So that was another fantastic talk, some really interesting stuff there. I've already know one question I want to ask. So if you also have questions, use apparently this one. You can try this one, but if it doesn't work, it works now. Nailed it. So do ask questions for, you two deserve that. You should give each other a high five. That was brilliant. Well done. We are going to take a quick break. So it's about going all the way upstairs again, have some more drinks, and then come back. I'll let you know when it's time, but about 25 minutes or so, and we'll see you here for the last talk. Thank you. Brilliant. Hope you enjoyed your drinks. We are now back for the second session, second part of this. Again, if you have any questions, please use the QR code that we now have confirmed is working. We have our last speaker ready to take stage. Just having a quick drink. The stage is all yours. Come over here, Henry. Henry, please. Big applause.
I didn't get the memo on having a joint speaker with me, so maybe I can, or any volunteers? Does someone, no? Okay. All right, hello everyone. My name is Henry Daggett, and I'm the design systems lead at Societe Generale. I am obsessed with design systems, but let's be honest, they're pretty draining. I made a little bit of a chart to explain this. So on this axis here, we've got excitement levels. And coming down here is time. And I think it looks something like this. Where what we start off with a pretty big high, and I think the absolute summit of that is with the version 1 release. You know, like everything shiny and new. And then things start to get a little bit serious. Nothing works in production. You've got like hundreds or millions of bugs to fix. And then you've got to like write release notes and do all the boring stuff. And maybe things get even more serious than that because you've got to deal with like governance and contribution and things like that. So yeah. All the while, the amount of work is consistently high. You know, like once we release version 1, like there's no drop off, you know. So we're dealing with this sort of like drop of excitement with a consistent amount of work. So I joined Societe Generale somewhere around here. I've been at SocGen for about 4 years now. So I got to see really sort of like the during and the aftermath of this amazing sort of big version release that we made. And it was like such a high, honestly, at the start, but I really sort of got to see, especially with sort of other contributors in the team, their excitement levels to dip, their motivation levels start to dip a little bit. And what I'm sort of getting at here is that there's very much a palpable before and after of this version 1 release. And everything after this version 1 release, where we sort of get down here where there's maybe like a bit of a heartbeat of excitement, it's not totally dead. So what I'm calling that is maintenance mode. So you've had a release, and then you kind of just go into like this infinite maintenance mode. So yeah, here's what I'm going to talk about. Got a few points. So the first thing is like the right mindset. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how to sort of have fun when we're still surviving through maintenance mode. Dealing with feedback, and of course, managing your energy. So having the right mindset. And I feel like there's a lot of sort of variables when it comes to mindset. But the first thing to do is accept that version 1 that you've just released might be a bit suspicious. A little bit dodgy there. And I feel like once you've established that in your mind, then it's a good mental place to go forward. This is our picker component. It's a data picker, combo box, whatever you want to call it. You can search and then you can select things. And I'm just using this as a good example because it happened not too long ago. So we released this component about a year ago, and we did a ton of work on it. It was probably the component that had the most amount of design work, research, and everything like that went into it. And we were happy. We sort of press play, we get it out there. There are like 4 or 5 projects who are immediately ready to use it. And the feedback starts coming in that it's not great to use, it's difficult to integrate, and it's kind of difficult to work with, and there's bugs and things like that. And honestly, that news was kind of crushing because we'd really, really, really pushed for this component. Like it was a lot of work. It was hard. And what that was, it was because we thought that once we'd released that first version, it was done. And so the advice here is sort of at the start, adjust your definition of done. And what you should do is adjust it towards continuous work, focusing on usability, not just for the end user, but also for the people who are actually integrating it, or designers and developers and things like that. All right, talk about fun. Like I said, so when energy levels start to come down a little bit, I think that fun is one of the things that you can always turn to. So I mentioned writing release notes earlier. It was a bit of a killer for me. And I know you guys are all reading this now, but I'll get to it. I really struggled to sort of in our sort of 2-week release cycle to continuously write release notes. And it was like boring. It was definitely getting me down at some points. So I dealt with it with a bit of humor. So I started sort of writing in my own personal brand of sort of like slightly sarcastic puns going in. And so, yeah, so for one of our pickers, we had this sort of ongoing joke about Shadow DOM, if you know what that is. It's a sort of technical thing with web components. But yeah, so our picker sort of became this character who would sort of haunt London's rainy streets at night. And and yeah, so, and also we had sort of things like this second line here, in case you can't read it, says, honestly, we surprised ourselves with how much we got done this week. So yeah, and those are sort of like our general release notes to clients as well. So everyone's seeing this. And it just sort of added a bit of levity, and honestly, it helped sort of motivate me to write more and more release notes. And yeah, so just to sort of give some social proof on this, I suppose. This is from one of our developers. I think he actually left SG, and he messaged me specifically to sort of out of the blue almost to talk about this. And he said, yeah, he definitely remembered the release notes. And yeah, it makes people want to read them. And this was kind of unexpected because when we'd started writing the release notes, it was like, it's kind of for me, it's kind of for the team, like it's a bit of a laugh. But in fact, what happened is that more and more, it started spreading. Like people started knowing that we're writing jokes and things like that. And it's sort of more and more people spread. And suddenly, people knew there was a picker update because they remembered the sort of rainy London scene joke. And so it was great. So it was just something small like that that actually started to have a bit of impact. So yeah, so the summary here, I think, is that people will read good communication more. So it's worth it, you know. And also, meanwhile, you can make those boring tasks fun. If you guys want to ask me questions afterwards about if you have a specifically boring task, I'm sure we can think of a way to make it funner for you. But yeah, and then on the second point, which is a little bit more serious actually, design system budgets can be cut at any time, you know? Like things can happen basically from whatever angle. So making things like communication, like remembering things to sort of have as ammunition, value ammunition, I'm going to call it, to show to stakeholders, I think is super important. So yeah. All right, and also, when it comes to release notes, before we move on, I've got to show this amazing thing from Maryia Christopher over at the Uber design team. I hope people remember this video from a long time ago, but it's like this guy combining things. So yeah, they're announcing maybe their tags component. I don't know about that, but yeah, it's just sort of, it's just sort of like another thing. You know, you can have fun in lots of ways. All right, cool. Dealing with feedback. Feedback, once you've released version 1, if you are still pre-version 1, I can tell you your feedback is coming, and you should encourage it. However, it is killing. We recently passed 4,000 issues in our feedback repo. We use like a GitHub repository to collect all sorts of feedback. So we're past 4,000, and actually I think I looked at 4,000 like 2 weeks ago. We're now at like 4,500. So to give you some kind of an idea of the velocity that we get here sometimes. We have a way of prioritizing. And I'm totally ripping off Dan Moore here. I totally buy into this philosophy. Add a component, and in this case, not just a component, maybe a bug fix, maybe a feature request or whatever, to a design system when 3 or more teams need it or are using it. We definitely do this. For the picker, for example, I think we had at least 6 teams who are asking for a data picker. So that was prioritized like pretty much instantly, right at the top of the list. Like high business value, it's prioritized. Obviously, there's some variance here. If a project with like that has really is an important business impactful project has the use case for it, and it's not too big, we might bump it up to the top of the list just for them. So it's that kind of thing when it comes to prioritization. For those things that you can't prioritize, what I recommend is communication and transparency immediately. People will be okay with even a really long delay. Like this comment here was from January, and I'm telling this person that we're not going to be able to do this until April. You know, so if you think about fast 2-week sprints and product cycles, that's a long time. But we were transparent immediately, and people were okay. So if I just read it out, this is kind of how I structure telling people this. We've added this to our backlog. So I'm telling them that it will be built in the future. We're currently focusing on some secrets, which I can't tell you, until April. So there's a date. So we won't be able to prioritize it until then. So that's kind of how we're giving. And there's also another line, which I'll get to later, which is if you'd like to work on it yourself and contribute, then we can assist you with that. But I'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, here's our philosophy. Do everything you can to not do. And I don't mean that in a lazy way, because obviously we're not trying to evade work here, but I want to give some sort of strategies. Number one, is there an existing solution to their problem? This is something that I think largely comes with experience. I know I'm way better than this after 4 years, seeing lots and lots and lots of different use cases. And it's something that I think I pride myself on, which is being able to find some sort of existing solution to basically everything. I'd estimate to say that we kill maybe 50% of our feedback tickets this way, by giving them something that they can already use. 2, is it an isolated use case? So this is the case where someone's come with something that we're like, yeah, okay, that's cool, but we don't really want it in our design system. But we're okay for you guys to use it. We actually label those as snowflake cases, because each snowflake's unique. So that's kind of the vibe there. And yeah, so we say, all right, you can use it, and maybe we'll come and give you a design review. So it sort of aligns to the system guidelines and things like that. And then number 3, which I sort of touched on in the ticket before, can they do it themselves? And this is an amazing way to recruit contributors. Ask them, yeah, can you just do it? And then suddenly they sort of start the path of integrating themselves into your design system. And you've suddenly found people who you can use. So yeah, I think this is a really valuable way. And so that's why with basically everything that we have to work on, I'm like, yeah, do you guys fancy contributing pull request or whatever for us, please? So it's something like that. All right, managing energy. So yeah, so I spoke obviously at the beginning in the graph, we're talking about motivation, we're talking about energy related things. And I think that people come at really the core of that. So I'm talking about collaborators and I'm talking about maintainers. And I like to think, so when I say maintainer, I'm talking about the people who are on your design system team. We have a design system council set up, so we don't really call ourselves a team, it's a council. But yeah, maintainers are the people who are the ones pushing things, so the ones who are working, doing most of their time on the system. And when I talk about contributors, those are people from product teams who just sort of come and maybe help with 1 or 2 things, And I like to think that the interaction is something like this, where we've got a fresh contributor, this husky, who is dragging us out of bed in the morning. And I think if you take this mindset to working with contributors, it can be really beneficial. So yeah, and I've got a few tactics to sort of share with you guys about how to manage working with contributors. And the first one is give them the enjoyable stuff. When it comes to design system work, there's a lot of stuff in there which could be perceived as boring. I don't want to name names, but documentation, and things like that. But there are definitely some things which are less exciting. And I'll talk about working with a designer because that's what I can really relate to. When we work with a designer sort of in particular, I want to give them the things, I want to play to their strengths. Like if they're a product expert at what they do, that's great. I'll give them that work and they'll start working on it. They'll go through all of the sort of things that we love about product design. So things like the ideation phase, the initial user testing, and sort of all of that fun stuff. And then the council will take over and work on things like documentation, but also more of the systematic stuff like states, like working with all of the different states that our components have got to have. So yeah, and this was a quote that I loved from Erin from the Zero Height Hiring Report, which is that the whole systems thinking mindset is something that's not easily understood. So when we're working with a contributor, why are we putting all of that stress on them when A, we can just do it ourselves, and B, it gives them a way better experience as a collaborator anyway. So yeah, happy contributors, happy maintainers. Feed off each other's energy. I can't express that enough, especially when you're deep into it. Also, could even be a section on its own. I mentioned that we have a council structure. This means that, I won't really call it an election process, but it's kind of like that. We are able to give maintainers a break. If someone is super fatigued, we just rotate them off the council and back onto a project. And it's a great way to give people sort of like new life in a way. So if you can in your team structures, if there is someone who's just absolutely flagging, like they're not enjoying the work anymore, why not rotate them onto a product team for a bit? And maybe they stay there, maybe they never come back. But if they do come back, we have this amazing thing that they've experienced using the design system in the wild. You know, they have all of that amazing experience, which they can then feed back into the system. And it's someone who has an intricate knowledge of the design system, who has then gone, worked on a product, seen firsthand that everything that they've built is kind of crap. And then they can come back and tell you about it. So it's perfect. All right, we're getting there. This is the end. All right, acceptance. Bit dramatic, but yeah, anyway. How often have you written to your utility companies? And I'm talking electricity, water, Wi-Fi. These are the sort of monopoly cards I could find. Telling them what a good job they've done. Has anyone ever told them, your utility company, that it's done well? Yeah, that's what I thought. But as soon as it stops working, how many seconds when your Wi-Fi stops working before you're looking for a support number, right? So yeah, that's kind of the vibe here. And what we really started to notice was that our design system is being viewed as a utility now. And in some ways that's great. And it's actually exactly where we want our system to be there. Because I think it's a good sign of maturity, it's a good sign of adoption, that people are basically taking it for granted, taking it as something that is constantly there with constant service. But there's a downside to that, you know, which is that we only really receive negative feedback. And there's a lot of sort of wider issues that I'd love to talk about, but I think that Lauren Lopret at one of the last year's Clarity conference had this amazing talk called Design Systems Burnout. She talked a lot about sort of the wider use cases around burnout and sort of a bit more of the context. So I'll leave that QR code until I see no more phones if you want to grab that. It's a YouTube link, so it's going to start playing out loud if you open the link. Just to let you know in advance. But yeah, so shout out to Lauren because she had an amazing contextual talk on this, and I highly recommend. While we're on the topic of external talks and things, check out Societe Generale's design medium blog. We've got lots of articles. I will say that this talk started out as an article, so if you're wondering about all the things I've talked about today, yeah, we've got it. Medium.com/Societe Generale Design. And there are lots of things that we're writing about and communicating about there, so a bit of self-promo, but hey. All right, this is kind of my last sentiment that I want to give to you. Look after yourselves. Like, we've shown the work can be tough. We've shown the work can be kind of brutal. Like, give yourselves a break, you know? And also, give your maintainers some love, you know? Like, people in the design system, and give them some positive feedback every now and again. Like, tell them when you're using their beautifully designed button, which they've spent like 2 years working on, tell them that it's great and it works. And the visual alignment's good, maybe. All right. Thanks so much. This was great.
There we go. Oh, yes, thank you. So we also have this fantastic thing because I'm expecting all of you to have loads of questions for the speakers. And if you do, you get to speak into this one. How are you? Oh God, there's so many. How are you all feeling? Yeah? Yeah, they did well, didn't they? Well done. Fantastic. We're going to see here what we have on the Slido. Okay, this is going really well already, so I love this. So, any of you who kind of were a first speaker before we get going? Yes? How did you... Was it like you expected? To be fair, I think you came across as you had done this before.
Thank you. I think it's just my charming personality.
I was about to say that, but he beat me to it. Okay, so let's get cracking with some questions here. So we got the first, for the awesome folks from Lego, have you considered not releasing global tokens to the wider platform to prevent people from directly using them?
This is a good question. I think one important thing to say is like some of the learnings we had are from like past experience and past takes, let's say, like hindsight is 2020, right? So one thing that happened with us is that the development of components happened right after we started building the first design tokens. So what happened was, as soon as we had the first set of global tokens, we started building the first set of components. So we had to build with global tokens because we didn't have as much like an alias set of tokens that was very strong, I don't know, like big enough, like abundant enough to cover all of our use cases. So we had to build and share those for all the teams to build layouts on top of it. So they were already released. And now, like after a couple of months, we realized, okay, all of the problems that come with it after we needed to, especially when partnering, and I guess I can also hand over the mic so Jess can talk from like partnering before the user groups and other designers. But when we started to have those refactors on the global areas, we started to see, oops, this is going to affect everything from the engineering point of view. So yes, I guess we wish we could not export those tokens anymore, but we are right now at a stage where people are using it and we don't have the capacity to just go and replace them everywhere with token and with aliases. So what we can do is an educational piece of like, look at the advantages. You won't have to go and have to refactor your design if we go and change it, because it's not really our responsibility to go and fix everything. But yeah, other than this, no, we can't just go back on this. So, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I guess is so we have content team, content designers, and the one reason why I brought the color ramp together, which I've also was reminded by one of my other developers, that the whole color ramp is actually built from the colors of the Lego bricks. So it's all the ramp is actually every single ramp you're seeing has got a connection to an official Lego brick. That was being utilized by content designers, and that's obviously a global token. So that has to be brought into the environment. And it's quite difficult to separate that out compared to the size and the spacing tokens. But we know we've already caused ourselves a problem by bringing the alias in, because obviously once the component layer comes in, we then have to take everything that's attached to aliases and stick that to component tokens. So we know we've caused ourselves a bit of headaches. But the other thing is, when it comes to the business point of view, they wanted to see value. They wanted to see us doing something. If we had just like sat there for 6 months going, yeah, we're going to build this these components, this system, they were like, what have we been doing for 6 months? We had to kind of put something out there and show it was tangible and show it was bringing some kind of value to the company. So we probably jumped ahead when we probably shouldn't have done, but we've learned from it. And of course, we will learn as we go a bit more. So,
Excellent, thank you. We got a question here for the people at Jet. Sorry, I've lost it. I was scrolling too quickly. Sorry. Was the system consolidation a business requirement or design team initiative? If it was the latter, how did you convince the business to kind of work on that?
Yeah, it was kind of a business requirement. We wasted a lot of like time, money, and energy by having like two different teams doing kind of the same thing, like side by side. Like, and it made no sense from a business perspective. Like, we deliver so much more now, like as one single team, and there's really just a lot of benefit for us, but also our users as well. So definitely business.
Okay, so this is leading on from this question, I guess, because it's kind of for everyone. So how do we then measure the coverage of the design system? I guess in your case across platforms, but in general, how do we measure? So let's start off with Jet and then come in with the other ones.
So how do we measure how it's being used?
Yes.
So we do like a lot of like feedback, analytics in Figma as well to like see how many teams like using the button, like is amazing. And then we can track that from like a development perspective as well, like to see how many teams are, I mean, I'll let Maryia say.
Yeah, from developers' perspective, currently we use feedback forms. First of all, like trying to find out which teams are using what, how happy they are about it, and we are planning to introduce. We have a tool called scorecards, which shows which teams are on which version of specific packages, and we want to involve it to see which teams are using our design system packages and on which version they are, and basically then we will see a clear picture of adoption.
Okay, great.
I'm mic'd. I want to preface with a bit of context. So our design system's been around for like 8-9 years now. So it's fairly sort of down the road. And our design system mainly serves like a suite of financial products. In case you don't know Societe Generale, it's a bank, by the way. I didn't say that in my talk. But so imagine like a sort of app store of financial investment apps. So now one of the requirements to sort of be on our platform is to use the design system. So there's that. But I'd say that sort of, I won't go too deep in, because I don't think we're pushing sort of real heavy sort of data analytics. It's more sort of a human-driven initiative where it's like, our design team is working like really hard on design reviews and design-led projects and things like that. So we sort of rely on those initiatives to push our design system out and to make sure that we're getting consistency.
Excellent, thank you. And for the Lego group?
Yeah, in our case, it's we started from scratch, and then because we decided to not really migrate the old library that we had and start with a couple of new components, we try to measure adoption from the number of squads that are consuming them, but we don't really expect everyone to consume every single component. But we do heavily encourage people to, if they are rebuilding their designs, so for instance, with the product listing page that we showed the design in our presentation, that they use the components, and if there are any components missing, then we can either our team can build or they can contribute with the contribution guide. But yeah, for the moment, I think we have 7 squads out of maybe 24 using it, but not all of them are like front-end, like full stack squads. So yeah, we try to not tie ourselves too much to adoptions in our OKRs just because it's quite tricky. But yeah, at the moment it's like number of squads.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So leading on from that, so Henry talked about ammunition against stakeholder decisions. What's the main KPI then do you defend design initiatives with?
I don't really know if we focus too much on like specific KPIs, to be honest with you. Like I said, at a platform level now, it's like compulsory, to use a design system. So that strips a certain amount. But there's always fight with projects. Like there's always fight with developers. We have we're using a lot of our framework is based on Bootstrap CSS. Like we're web-based. So obviously there's a consistent fight against custom CSS. And so there are sort of various measures that we go to with design reviews, but yeah, it's not perfect. And so, but I will say it's a consistent struggle there against all the forces.
I saw some smiles from the engineers over here. I don't know, do you want to comment on any of that?
No, it was funny to hear that they had fights with developers. We don't have fights, right? Great team, collaborate, we're fine.
Excellent. Okay, so then in that case, I've actually got a question on that. So how do you get developers interested in starting a design system from scratch? And since you guys are not fighting, maybe you guys want to pick that one up first.
Actually, in Just Eat, the design system started from developers, which was really cool because we started with UI components library. Yes, we had designs and we were following the design approach, but it was really interesting because when we found out that designers came up with this unified design language, which they tried to push, we adopted it. We just said, yeah, sure, we have our set of variables, we can align them with your tokens and we can work together. And I think it started we had some frictions with teams, with product teams, obviously, because they had strict deadlines, they had their roadmaps, and they were just we will build everything ourselves, we don't need your design system. This took, obviously, a lot of conversations about why they needed to use it. But yeah, when people start using design systems, they obviously see benefits, which is super cool.
Excellent. Good. For you guys?
Yeah, I can take developers in general, they like everything that's shiny, new, and we use that as an opportunity to bring also new technologies in the tech stack that we believe that were the best not in terms only of design, but also performance and accessibility. So we use this as a form of like moving a bit away from JavaScript and CSS in JavaScript. So we moved towards CSS modules and also towards TypeScript, because much of our legacy component library is in JavaScript only and using style components. So this is also, and also like we try to bring in more best practices in our components, trying to be as few JavaScript as possible, more native components, more accessibility from the start using the ARIA guidance. So this kind of things also like help to like get the buy-in from other teams, even if they don't, I don't really want to refactor my page, but they see the gains from performance and accessibility. So it's easier to get them done. So this has been a win.
Okay, fantastic. So you mentioned accessibility, so I'm going to use this as a segue to my next question here. 4 Legos to start with. When making global color changes, where in the hierarchy do you verify everything is still accessible?
Yeah, so
She handed that one over quickly.
So one reason we kind of came up with the idea of having the color ramp was in our CMS, you can put any color you want in. So a content producer can go put yellow background in and put white text on it. And we're like, what are you doing? So one reason why we brought the color ramp in was to be able to do those checks. We have Lego defined colors. That's in the CMS as well. So if a producer comes in now, it flags. You're failing AA compliant accessibility rating in the page, and it won't even publish the page anymore. So we've got that, and then one thing we're trying to do with the color ramp now is to kind of, obviously APCA isn't officially, WCAG 3 isn't official yet, and then eventually it will be, and that's kind of what we kind of created the groundwork for that. So all our kind of color library works on both WCAG 2, and eventually when that becomes official, then WCAG 3 as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So yeah, and again, everything we're doing, if you put like black text on like a white background, that obviously passes. If you put it on a yellow background, we're now forcing the color in reverse. So that's something else that we've got from a design point of view.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Speaking of accessibility, there's actually a question here for Jet. What, if any, challenges did you face when switching the brand color to orange? This is asked by, getting some giggles from the audience here. This is actually a question by someone who also works for an orange brand. No names mentioned though, just the color.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. Orange isn't great. So we have kind of varying tokens of orange. So we have our like pure like brand orange, which we use for like marketing and like brand specific things. But then we also have like interactive orange, which Molly is somewhere here, worked really closely with brand to kind of improve our accessibility. I mean, we're never going to hit like small white text on our orange background. Like that's just never going to happen. But we have pushed that. We have very strict guidelines around, 19 pixels. You have to use large text on our orange backgrounds, but orange comes with limitations in design, unfortunately. So it's just trying to figure out like how they're going to work best for the brand and trying to be very creative, obviously within your kind of like AA compliance is what I would say on that.
Any other comments on accessibility? Have you guys run into any problems?
Yeah, of course. Our brand colors are red, so
I was hinting.
Yeah. And that's not accessibility. It's just like I remember when I first came, there was this website, and it was like the key action like was in red, and it was like okay. But yeah, so I'll talk about that. We got around that by convincing brand that we're designing really operational interfaces so we can use black. So that was the first step. The second step, and I'm glad that I got to answer this question because we've done loads of work. We have a system which we call adaptive colors. And this is with like a whole lot of sort of CSS trickery. We have like, let's say 4 operational colors, and we have like 3 or 4 backgrounds that you can put those operational colors on. The colors automatically change depending on what background they're on. And so instead of designers having to say, all right, I'm going to use info blue like 300 here because it's got this background or whatever, they can just use info blue and it's already there. So yeah, we're really proud of that. We've written about it. So I'm going to plug that. But yeah, often that breaks though, and that's not fun. because then like 300 products been like, oh, you've broken our accessibility. And we're like, yeah, sorry.
And how do you deal with that?
We fix it.
Okay. There you go. You just fix it. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great answer. So this one here is for Lego. Do your designers use the same version numbers as the engineers? And do you have any tips for branching in Figma? It's a very specific question.
I'll start. Yeah, so versioning. Yeah, well, we always get kind of confused about what version, because we have a version of scroll, and then we have a version of, what's the thing we
Yeah, we don't follow, like the component library and the design tokens are two separate libraries, so they are both versions, but they don't follow the same version. So
and with what we're building, it's so early on. So we've kind of got, I guess we've almost got like a version 3. So I've got the components that are working in version 3, but I'm literally struggling right now is I want to create a version 4. I'm like, well, I've got all these components over here. That's all linked to people's work. I'm now building a version 4 with some new alias values. Hang on a minute, all the components are over there. Now I've got to come over here. And how do I link my designers to this? I'm literally in that state right now. Versioning is going to be a nightmare, I think. Yes, branching might help that. And I know that other designers who are working are playing around with branching. But yeah, it's something we're still working out, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's something that we need to kind of figure out. But versioning is going to be painful eventually in Figma as we build more and more components out and as we have more versions to get down the line. But yeah, it's a learning curve, definitely.
Yeah, can imagine. Actually, speaking of versioning, so for, well, you kind of touched on this, this chosen strategy for, is there a specific strategy or how does that look?
So on the code point of view, like from the component library to the monorepo, is a bit easier to control. So we have we use Yarn for like dealing with the monorepo and the Yarn workspace, and we can have set a resolution for the whole monorepo. So we say, this is the version. You can't really go up or down. Like everyone's going to use the same thing. And the good thing is like we don't really need to worry about upgrading the whole front end for like minor or patch versions. We release them, we let people know, and then people can go and upgrade for everyone. But major versions, because they lead to breaking changes, right now what we're doing is our squad takes the responsibility for going and fixing everywhere and everything. And this has been painful. I wouldn't say it's very sustainable for the long run, but it is the way that we chosen how to deal with it. Like in the future, I believe like having more maintainers in different squads will help us with that. Like, oh, this is the reason why we had to do this breaking change. Now please go and collaborate with us on that. But for now, this is how, okay, we have like a few afternoons of pain, like having to copy and paste a lot of like token changes, but it is how we chosen to do. So we have the versions. We try to be very careful because we have broken out like some things before by upgrading our dependencies, and oops, this should have been a major change, but we released as a minor. Now we are being very careful with that, and then major changes we take care, and the others no, we don't.
Okay, and how do you guys deal with versioning?
So from the design side, we do different versioning to development, kind of same as Lego. We run on like completely different versioning. So we don't really do like minor releases in design. We just do like big major releases. We've got a new restyling, or we're completely changing how we do the design system, which may be coming a little bit later this year. So we handle that quite differently, but similar to your kind of like support model with that, like 'cause even with like smaller component releases, Geordie, who's here, for example, like did a complete new bottom sheet, and that was a complete like breaking change from the design side. So he was absolutely amazing and like worked with all the designers and just updated absolutely everything. Like, as you said, like it's really just about like collaboration and making sure that everyone else who's using your design system is happy as well.
And you said it was different from engineering. So how are you going?
So basically, because we're supporting multiple frameworks and releasing different libraries, especially in different ways, because one is released as one single library and another releases different components separately, we can't just go and update everything and everywhere. And we have like a lot of teams which use our library. So we try to clearly communicate each release. We have change logs, change sets. We post release updates on Slack just to make sure that teams are aware that something changed. And obviously they can go and update when they're ready to it. There is no rush with bug fixes obviously, but normally they are very easy to update. But with major version, each team can go and update when they're ready.
Excellent. I've just found one question who just added, which I think is quite interesting, and this I think is you, Henry, because you used the word surviving, and someone says surviving is a very strong word. Are we creating a situation where we're trying to force a square peg into a round hole and creating problems for everyone with design systems? There we go. The tough questions in this Q&A session.
First of all, I was being dramatic.
Okay. You?
But yeah, a round peg in a square hole, I completely disagree. I think if you're coming to design systems with that approach, you're doing it wrong. I think it's the absolute opposite. So, okay, you're starting with a hole, and you're building use cases for that hole.
Okay, continue.
I mean, to explain,
Cautiously.
so basically, I feel like square peg in a round hole is the kind of mindsets where it's like, we're going to build a design system first and then build products. I don't think that's really how it should work, and how it can't really work like that, in my opinion. You have to build a product first and then build a design system out of your product.
Okay. You saved that very well. Thank you. I was worried where that was going. So I've almost regretted asking that question, but now I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to a different question. I think it's better. Question for Lego. Do you use the Lego analogy to describe design system to stakeholders? That's some good questions here today.
That's a good question, but yeah, no, I didn't have to. Which is a shame.
You use the IKEA analogy.
You used IKEA. That goes down a right treat. Brilliant. So continuing with Lego here, do you engage consumers, designers and developers into coming up with alias token naming conventions? And if you do that, how do you then do that? How do you engage them?
No, so currently we've just kind of, because it's such an it's in infancy, we have the 4 leads, so we haven't really kind of gone through that kind of sharing to other designers yet. It's probably something we should do to get more feedback, to make sure that what we're creating from the kind of the object, the modifier, actually makes sense to the designers. That is something we need to start doing. I've mentioned before about that iteration loop of making sure we get that feedback in. But like I said, we're in such an early stage right now that we're just trying to get the basics out there first, and then we'll start to iterate on those things. But yeah, getting feedback in is important at any stage of design, to be honest with you. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the Jet team, so you guys chat a little bit about the culture issues. Can you expand a little bit on what have you come across?
Yeah, definitely. So we had like 2 very different teams, like who had never worked together before, but also like they're both very passionate about their products. Like people who work in design systems care like a lot about what they're doing, but because they've never really talked, like we'd never really worked together, like to all of a sudden start working together, like there was going to have to be compromise somewhere, and trying to like navigate how we were going to compromise and what things we would compromise, like was difficult, like it wasn't easy, but we got there and we're all much happier now because of it. Like it was good to see like the best of both, because we've all had like really good things out of our design systems, so much happier after, but it was definitely like a struggle at times, just like trying to get our way through.
So you kind of have not just designers and engineers, you have the 2 different cultures as well.
Yeah,
so there's
definitely.
a lot of...
Like it's just like different ways of working. Like we would approach the exact same problem like 2 completely different ways, just because of that's how we'd always done it. Like no one's challenged that. Obviously, like we've evolved on our 2 like individual sides previously, but to all of a sudden like change your complete ways of working, how you would like communicate with your team, like got now just so many more people, like that was just a really challenging like moment, but it's better now because of it, which is
excellent. Good, glad to hear it. So Henry, you were talking about your design system that you guys are using now sort of further down the line a little bit, and you got a council setup you mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit about how does actually work?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, our council is made up of some designers and some developers, and we have to have that mix always, I think. And currently, I think it's like, we try and keep it small as well. Currently it's 4 people. It's been 4 people for a couple of years now. And we just had a big change. Like we've changed out design system technical leads. So and when it comes to, I actually really call it elections because it's not like that, but it's like if one of our teammates is really passionate about design systems and really pushing, then first we'll maybe work with them as a contributor, and eventually maybe that can sort of move on to joining the council as well. And that happened to a designer just recently. And sort of the prerequisites are if they have enough time to work on design systems, because in our team structure we're sometimes working on other projects and things like that. So if they've got time to actually give proper time to the council, then that's sort of one of the major ones. Then the rest of the setup wise, feedback we collect through GitHub. We have a lot of processes in place for validation and things like that. And we have different ways so that when someone suggests something, we're sort of analyzing at the first point, like, is this something new? Is this an upgrade? Is it whatever? So we're giving it that label. We're maybe trying to assess the complexity of it as well. So we just have a good idea of the work needed. And then when it comes to priority, I talked about it in my talk, it's like, if there are business use cases for it, then we can prioritize it. If not, then we probably can't. But yeah, with the rest of the governance, our systems of, I think something that's good actually, the council's been around for like 2-3 years now, and it's sort of maintaining itself. So I think we're pretty comfortable with the setup that we've got.
Nice. Do any of you have anything similar, or how is it?
I mean, we're quite a different team. Like, I think we're 20, maybe just over 20. Like, we've got 5 designers and then, like many more developers in our team. So we are a very different structure, and we're full-time on the design system as well. Like, we obviously help where it's needed, but very different structure, but super interesting, like how that's working for you guys.
Very nice. Excellent. And at the Lego group?
Well, yeah, like I said, we've got the 4 leads from a design point of view. When we started kicking off, we did have developers involved, and we do have like a kind of there's a weekly session, isn't there, between the kind of the business side and the shop side, mainly because the kids side and the education side, they're nowhere near even building components out yet. So, but I do like the idea of the council, and that's probably something that we should probably start looking at from both design and development coming together. I think it's a really good initiative.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting setup. I think there's many people will be looking into that. We're working on a project right now where I think it could be quite an interesting approach to take. So speaking of kind of designers and engineers working together, I do want to mention the fact that we actually do have engineer designer on talk. I'm sorry you're by yourself today, Henry, but we are. You've seen the pictures of is Snoop Dogg and Katy Perry around here. There was some paper cutter. So I almost grabbed one. Yes, that's what I was thinking. We should have done that. So working as designers and engineers together, what have you found to be the biggest challenges? Let's start with the Jet team here. What have you found to be?
That's a hard one because we get on so well.
Yeah, I mean, you did say that earlier, so,
Challenges, I think my thing is terminology from like my personal perspective. Like, we can be talking about the same thing but using completely different words. Like, I think for me that's like a big challenge for myself. So I think a lot of repetition, making sure we're actually both talking about the same thing, for me is key.
Yeah, I think for developers, it's like knowing when is the right time to involve developers into the discussions, because if we will be involved too early, it will take a lot of time. Because basically designers' ways of working is, I can't say that it's faster, but it's just different speed, and they have so many iterations through quite a lot of ideas, and we're involved when they think they have the decision, and then we come and just like try to adjust it, which I think is the right way.
That's a team that gets on really, really well.
But this is challenging to know when for both of us, right? To know when to be involved. But I think we're on the right way.
Excellent. And how is it at the Lego Group? What's your challenges? Engineer starts.
Yeah, cool. I think, we do communicate really well. I think we do got to a very good groove of knowing what we expect out of each other. Probably the biggest challenges is around understanding things that we both have to do, but sometimes are more difficult from our side, one side or the other. For instance, versioning from the engineering side, I think it's more straightforward, but as Jess was mentioning before, in Figma, it's a nightmare. And it's not as easy
for an engineer to understand why, why, like branches should be enough, but it's not, because Figma is not prepared for this. And in the other way around, I think like breaking changes in tokens may seem less of a problem from Figma because it just changed something and then everything trickles down. But in code, it's like hours and hours of having to replace things and getting other teams to QA and code review your changes, and just like making everything more fragile when merging a change. So I guess those things, like explaining to each other why those are an issue, that I think we had those moments of like, oh, please don't do this at this moment because of that. But now, yeah, we are in a good group of like, we understand the challenges.
I think you nailed it on the head, really. I think it's the whole breaking changes, and we probably will make more. Sorry, because we are finding better ways of doing things. Like in Figma, there's now dimensions. Sorry, tokens plugin is our dimensions. Is something that's going to come down the line where we've got all of that split out, sizing, spacing, borders all split out. That can live in one space. But of course, we've tied that all up in the system now. So eventually, that could be quite painful. But one thing I'm trying to do is also educate the other designers, because on their side they don't have any technical. Nothing's been built yet. So I need to keep reminding those guys, hey, we have something living here, something that is anything you break, we are actually going to feel that pain. You're not going to feel it. We're going to feel it. So I have to try and educate the other designers that are in that kind of group to try and make sure they understand what's happening on there. But yeah, I'd say breaking changes is probably the big one, that just to fully understand what it can do. Because like you said, in Figma, I can do a find and replace, but you can't really do that in the development environment. It's out there in the world, so it's a much bigger thing to try and fix. So yeah.
Excellent. Okay. We are coming towards the end. I have one question, and this is for all of you individually. And I wanted to call it a quick fire round, but we'll see how it goes. This actually comes on from talking about the ups and downs of working on design system. But what has been the most rewarding for you? And that's why I feel like this is an individual answer from each of you. What do you find to be the most rewarding thing of working on design systems? Starting with you, Henry.
Yeah. Okay. I think. When I saw my first component out in the wild, when I released the first thing I've worked on, I was really proud of myself, I'll be honest. But now, these days, I'm kind of proud of the team, actually, and how we've been managing. Because like I said, we have a limited workforce, and we really rely heavily on contributors and things like that. So just the fact that we're still going, like it's 8 years on, I'm pretty proud of that, to be able to say, like, we've been pushing, and we've been still releasing stuff every 2 weeks, so yeah.
Excellent.
I was going to say team, but he stole it. So I think what I'm going to say is just like the continual progression. Like for me, I really enjoy working on something that is constantly evolving. I think it gets a bit boring, as you were kind of saying, like if it's constantly the same. So I really enjoy when we hit that next like peak. Like that really like sparks it for me.
For me, it's actually like because we don't know exactly how many teams are using our components, and as I said, like we are planning to add some automation there, but basically sometimes people come to me or to our team and say how cool something is in our design system, and we didn't expect this, and it's so rewarding to hear that people use it and that people finding good stuff in it, and that you even didn't know about it, that they use it and they are happy with it. So yeah, it's really rewarding.
Awesome.
Yeah, for me, it's very close, like feeling both when we got the first banner out live in production and seeing something that like after months of work we had like developed and it's in production, it was really cool. But I think nowadays it's more about having positive feedback from other teams and seeing that our component library and design systems grow is living, like even if we kind of need to stop, like sometimes we need to stop working on it as frequently as we used to because of all the priorities on the team. And people still mention it and people still come and say, oh, this is so cool. I want more components. I want more designs. And then you just see like, oh, it's living and breathing. It's like, it's out of my hands now. It's in the world. It's in the wild. It's quite rewarding. Yeah.
Excellent.
Echo all those things that have been said. I think the one thing for me, Lego is a massive, massive organisation, and is certain areas where teams will go off and work on their own. This design system is the first time where the 4 user groups have come together to try and make something consistent, and to make that happen, I think will be fantastic. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do, but to be able to have something where you can just change an area, and you've got a button that goes from business to to kids to shop, that would be such an amazing achievement. So that's where I'm seeing it. So
Awesome. Brilliant. Okay. On that, we're going to wrap up the Q&A. So thank you so much to our speakers. And then I'm going to do some quick chat. Thank you. I'll invite you to come and sit down. While you make your way off stage, I have to say that we don't do this Q&A as tradition. There's always someone who asks a interesting question. And I wanted to read out this session's interesting question. Sorry, I'm just trying to read this. I'm guessing this is coming from the pie and the snack related earlier. So what is the best ratio of fat to flour when making apple crumble topping? I'm aware it's crumble rather than pie, but they're on the same level. We don't need to answer that, but I do think it's worth reading that out because I find it interesting that there's always one random thing that finds its way into our Slido deck, and I'm here for it every time. Absolutely. Okay, so moving on. Before we go, we do have, I mentioned earlier that there might be a little surprise. So before we do all of this stuff here, we're going to have a little Oprah moment. If you went to the last one, you may remember that we had a bit of an Oprah moment. So yes, I've already saw someone who just dived under their seat immediately. So take a look under your seat. For those of you yes, I know, don't worry, we thought about that too. For you who's sitting on a cushion or a pillow, look at under the pillows and see if you find something. Oh, yeah, there we go. Everyone's going for it. Oh, I've heard somebody ripped something. Okay, there is a learning for me here. Stop ripping the stickers off the chairs. No. The stickers are not it. Don't rip the stickers off. Okay? Don't put them back immediately. If you have it, it's pretty obvious. There we go. We have one, it looks like this. It's not a sticker. So don't ruin the furniture. Oh, and we have one at the back as well. Fantastic. So if the two of you on the way out, you want to make your way and see our lovely Wild D people over here, we have some goodie bags for you. So congratulations. There we go. So we are still in the planning for the next DSL, but this time it will be a little while before we come back, but hang tight and we'll come back to you all. Our sister community, React.js Girls, will be back again soon, so keep an eye out for that one. They should be launching their next event very soon. And as you know, React and design systems, so there should be some crossover interest. As we heard before, remember that Wild D is looking for interesting talent, and so is Jet, and Jet got massive. They have parties and cultures and DJs and whatnot, so we don't know how to compete with that, but we'll do our best. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank all of our speakers, the Lego Group, Jet, and Generale Societe. No, am I getting it right? No, I didn't this time either. I will say one thing for tonight, though. We did cover 3 areas that I really love. I love food, and I love Lego, and we all love money. So there we go. So on that one. Thank you for joining us. Catch us on the social mixer. It's at the Conductor. If you don't know where it is, you go into that lift, you go downstairs, and you go outside of the door, and there it is. So it's very, very close by. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And yes, there will be a recording available if you feel like that was so good. I need to rewatch some of that, I learned some of it, or I need to share it with other people, which of course you will, because it was brilliant. And by that time, you might have edited out a few things as well, so who knows. That's it. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.